Hello and welcome to the only part of this room that is not a mess. As we learned in one of my previous videos, I really enjoy writing theses, which is the pretentious correct way of saying the plural of thesis. I really enjoy writing thesis statements, especially like really silly ones that I can kind of take off into a weird direction. I think this all started when I was playing Breath of the Wild for the first time. Ganon's, I guess, evil influence over the land is corporealized as this sort of pink and black goo, I guess. And, you know, the smart adult part of my brain knows, okay, the landscape is mostly green because it's Hyrule, so pink is something that can be very easily seen. It's a good contrast color. It looks very stark in basically every part of the map. But, you know, the silly part of my brain thought, what would I think about this being pink if I was like an over-enraged, like bottom-of-the-barrel clickbait YouTuber? Like, Ganon's power is pink. Is that because pink is the color of women and women are bad? Is this game misogynist? Click now. After that, I moved on to writing weird thesis statements for children's media. I work in childcare, so there are certain kids' movies that I've just seen like way too many times. All kids love Star Wars. I basically have The Phantom Menace and The Force Awakens memorized. Kids really love Nemo. Kids really love like the original animated Disney movies, especially if they're like animals. Kids love like The Lion King and Robin Hood. What else? Spy Kids 3. I'm not sure why, but that's the one that kids really like is the third one. Basically because I work in childcare, I've had to watch certain movies over and over and over again, and to keep myself engaged in the movie and like not on my phone, I will come up with like weird conspiracy theories, like weird thesis statements, just so that I can keep myself engaged in the movie along with the kids. This past summer, I have watched all 3 of the original Toy Stories multiple times, and I just recently saw the 4th one, and I came up with a lot of thesis statements, but none that were enough for like an entire video. So I have decided to compile them all into a bunch of mini essays for your viewing pleasure. Enjoy. In the film Toy Story 2, the character of Stinky Pete, in response to Woody's decision to not go to the toy museum, says that Woody's alternative is to be ruined and forgotten at the hands of children, and spend eternity rotting in some landfill. This, along with Woody's longevity as a 50s or 60s era toy living in the 1990s and 2010s, suggests that toys do not age, and proposedly cannot die. However, the insinuation at the end of the series' 3rd entry, when the toys are headed towards an incinerator, is that they can die if completely destroyed. Judging by Woody's disembodied but unmoving arm in Toy Story 2, and by Sid and Hannah's dismembered but sentient toys in the first Toy Story, the logic of this film universe brings us to the conclusion that so long as a head or large portion of the body remains, the toys will remain alive. By this logic, we must conclude that toys made before contemporary times or even pre-recorded history, if left mostly intact, are alive. This brings us to Night at the Museum. In Toy Story 2, Woody learns that he was made as a toy counterpart to a character by the same name from Woody's Roundup, a television show in the late 50s and early 60s. In the show, the character of Stinky Pete is shown to be a buffoonish character, while the Pete that we know as the movie's antagonist seems to display a higher level of intelligence. However, in one scene, the facade slips. While discussing the cancellation of Woody's Roundup, Pete states that the reason is, quote, 2 words, Sputnik. Once the astronauts went up, children only wanted to play with space toys. To any children watching, this may have felt like a simple world building, showing Pete's resentment towards space-themed toys like Buzz. But any history buffs watching may have caught the fact that Sputnik is one word with 2 syllables, and the word can easily be seen on the cover of the magazine Pete has been in storage with. Despite his decades of hatred giving him a classier voice than his on-screen counterpart and a calculating mind to match, Stinky Pete may be illiterate. In an intimate confession, Jessie shares with Woody that she was once the favorite toy of a young girl named Emily. According to Jessie, they did everything together, but when Emily grew older and no longer needed Jessie in the same way, she donated her doll. The story is shown in a montage, with sad music playing over it, so the audience is meant to feel what Jessie feels, that she was betrayed and abandoned by someone whose love faltered. But from a real-world perspective, a girl found her beloved childhood doll and decided that someone else needed it more than she did. Jessie, you weren't being abandoned. You were being donated so that an underprivileged child could feel loved, you selfish!
Welcome back, fellow Rationals. Today we are going to be talking about Toy Story 2 and how it is an affront to cinema. The logical fallacies are abound. Buzz and the others waste valuable time walking over 20 blocks to find Woody, when they simply could have asked Andy's mom for a ride.
When the character of Buzz Lightyear is first introduced in the first installment of the series, Buzz is convinced that he is the real Buzz Lightyear, while the rest of the characters are aware that they are toys. Before he understands the truth about his reality, he is able to quote verbatim his character's mission statement, follows his prime directive of sorts while interacting with the locals, and even after his revelation is able to relay Starfleet-coded language to another Buzz Lightyear toy. He as a toy is instilled with what at first seems to be every facet of his character, but in the second movie, with the introduction of the second Buzz, we learn that this isn't the case. The Buzzes are chased and then confronted by a Zurg toy, the counterpart of Buzz's mortal enemy and the evil emperor of Buzz's universe. In a critical moment of their fight, the second, still deluded Buzz says that Zurg killed his father, but Zurg then reveals that he is Buzz's father! This comes as an earth-shattering revelation to Buzz, which begs the question, how much of Buzz's story does Buzz know? If a toy is meant to represent a character, but not at the end of the story, but frozen somewhere in the middle, then what do they know about themselves? If I, for instance, bought a Mario figurine, would he only know the story of the game the toy was created to partner with, or would he know everything from past to present? If I bought a Guts figure, would his knowledge of his narrative depend on, say, whether or not his eye was closed, what weapon he had? If I bought the most recent made Guts figurine, would he know when Kentaro Miura was going to fucking update? Hello, I'm sitting at my computer getting clips for the video, and I just realized, even though I've seen this movie a million times, I just realized that the carpet looks like the carpet from The Shining. Does Toy Story take place in In multiple installments of the Toy Story series, the toys can be seen piloting cars and vehicles. While not alive themselves, if they have no face, these toys are capable of being driven at sometimes unbelievable speeds, such as the chase scene at the end of the first film, or in Lotso's motorcade in the third. This begs the question, if any toy vehicle shares the capabilities of its model, could, say, a Millennium Falcon toy achieve light speed? Honestly, it's lucky Buzz only came in a paper box. If he had come in an actual plastic spaceship, he might have been able to...
And in this scene, even though these are plastic toys and would obviously not be heavy enough to make an impression on compact American topsoil, the indentations...
What is up, you guys? Today we are going to be talking Toy Story conspiracies. So you guys, in Toy Story 4, you guys, I'm not kidding, when Bo Peep sees Buzz Lightyear, she goes, "Moving buddy!" But if you remember from the first movie, they weren't moving buddies, because Buzz wasn't even in the moving truck. He ended up in the car with Andy. So you guys, I think that Toy Story 4 takes place in an alternate universe.
And why would he make this commercial while crying? This entire movie belongs in a poop machine!
A consistent trait shared by the characters of the Toy Story franchise is their inexplicable and sometimes comical ability to go limp when humans approach. Even Buzz, who to his knowledge at the time of the first film doesn't believe he is a toy. While this could be seen as him blending in with the locals as some sort of prime directive and method of avoiding suspicion by Andy, who he calls the toy's leader, a new perspective can be gained when we see that Forky of all people instinctively goes limp inside of humans as well. This is truly fascinating. By the very nature of being a toy, it's coded into the fabric of who you are, what to do when humans approach. In the same way that humans do not need to be taught how to root. In Toy Story 3, Buzz, through some wacky hijinks, is changed into a Spanish-language version of himself and no longer speaks English with the rest of his friends. Until he is returned to normal, he refers to Woody as VAQUERO, a Spanish word for cowboy or any mounted stock herder. But suddenly that begs the question, why can't Woody speak any Spanish? If he, or his character rather, were out in the western frontier, he would have, no doubt, come into contact with some of the classic vaqueros of history. Woody's lack of Spanish comprehension and the lack of diversity in the show Woody's Roundup speaks to the whitewashing of cowboys in fiction and pop culture, as well as
lots of hug and bear.
Pink, is that because...
Pink is the color of women, and women are...
Is this
Film.
miscreants on the internet with nothing better to do and their minds in the gutter really love ruining things intended for children. If Forky is simply a fork with googly eyes who managed to come to life, then what the bloody hell are the requirements to be a toy? Many people started to question if it's possible to, for example, put googly eyes on a sex toy and by that simple act, make it sentient. Now, this question is obviously gross when talking about a children's film, but it does come from a place of valid curiosity. How do you decide a toy's sentience? In one of the Disney Plus exclusive short films, Forky even tries to befriend a mug with a face on it. Now, why is this mug not alive, but the Zurg belt buckle from Small Fry is? That thing doesn't have a face, why is it alive? At the end of the day, though, we have a small clue. That mug doesn't belong to Bonnie. It's Bonnie's mom's. That Zurg belt buckle isn't going to be worn by an adult. It's going to be given to a child. At the end of the day, the difference in what could make a toy sentient or not sentient has nothing to do with eyes. It has to do with the love of a child.
Either that or Bonnie used the power of Satan.